Hope everybody's having a great evening. It's beautiful weather out here in Los Angeles. Beautiful soccer weather. I see some friends on here. Jeff Jacobs, how you doing, bud? Give me a smile. There we go. Get a little head nod. I see it. Anyway, yeah, really quick. Grew up playing soccer. Was a semi-pro beach volleyball player out here in California in the late 90s and early 2000s. Fell back in love with soccer after the beach just got too difficult to travel to where I lived, and found Maccabi USA a few years after that. Played in the 2013 games in Israel, and then was lucky enough to chair the squad in 2015 down in Santiago, Chile. We were lucky enough to win a bronze. Well, I shouldn't say lucky enough. We were good enough to win a bronze medal down there. I like to say that we went down to South America and kicked some South American butt in soccer in their own game. It was brilliant. Had a great time. So I'm happy to be doing this tonight. It's a big honor. I appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Diana Redman. She is in the purple. There she is. She is a mental performance consultant. She's a former professional soccer player in Israel as well as in the United States. And she had, if I'm correct, 33 caps for the Israeli national team, with more than 15 years of experience as an elite athlete all over the world. She's turned her career ups and downs into a lifelong passion of helping athletes understand and overcome all aspects of their mental health while maximizing their playing potential. She's played in the United States, she's played in Israel and Spain, Holland, and a few more countries. With several appearances, and this is really cool, with a few appearances in the UEFA Champions League qualifiers in both league and cup victories under her belt, Diana is one of the Israeli league's most recognizable players. And I'm happy to be able to tell you that I've actually played on the field with her, where she was quite able to embarrass some of the male players on the field. She's going to smile because she'll remember those plays. But that was awesome. She's a clinical psychology doctoral candidate, holds a Master of Social Work specializing in crisis and trauma. Again, she helps athletes with emotional regulation, addiction counseling, co-occurring disorders, anger management, injury recovery, motivation, mindfulness, and goal setting. She also specializes in preconception, perinatal, and postpartum athlete supports, okay? And, today we're just going to talk a little bit about soccer and, the connection to Maccabi USA. So, Diana, give us a little bit of an understanding of how you fell in love with soccer. All of us, we're all here for a reason. We all love this game very much. But how was it for you? How did it go for you?
Yeah, so I played at a young age. I think when I was really young, I was a little bit shy. That's what I was told. So I was put in soccer to kind of break that and, a little more socializing. But it ended up being something that I was really good at, enjoyed. I did that along with track and field as well. But as the years went on, I played in the U.S., ODP program. I was in the national pool. So it was something that started to become a really big part of my life at a young age. But it wasn't until college that I kind of had a connection more with Israel, knowing that it was a possibility to play in Israel and that I could actually play for the national team. So before that, I had no clue that was even, on the horizon. So it was a really great kind of by chance scenario. My college coach ended up being Reuben Young, who was a player for the national team and for Hapoel Haifa. So he kind of just said, you know what, I know somebody, I'm gonna make a call, here's a ticket and go. And that's kind of what launched me. There wasn't a long process of, should I do this? Should I not do this? It kind of just, okay, that's an opportunity, I'm gonna go. So that's kind of the short story of how I ended up in Israel, was basically after college.
Right on. Very cool. Tell us a little bit about your time in college. I know you went to Queens College, right?
Yeah. So first I went to Rider University. I was on track and field scholarship. I ended up transferring. So I kind of made an oopsie, didn't know a lot of the transfer rules in NCAA. And so I got recruited by St. John's. And so I thought I'll just transfer, to St. John's. Turns out I didn't realize you couldn't go from D1 to D1 without sitting out a year. So I said, okay, I'll go to Queens College just for a year, and then I'll transfer to St. John's. But while I was at Queens College, met Roby Young, and started to fall in love with soccer again. And it ended up being just a really good fit. Just, emotionally for me, I felt great. Physically, I felt great. Queens College is a great college. So I ended up staying there and not actually transferring to St. John's. And it ended up being what I thought was a mistake or was kind of like an oopsie moment, ended up being probably the most important year or important change in my career.
Very, very cool. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about, how you first got signed and how you transitioned from, your college career into your pro and national team career.
Yeah, it was pretty quickly. There was a couple coaches that had already known I was coming. They've seen video and they spoke to Roby Young and they were kind of like, just send her over. And that's she's pretty set. There was no kind of waiting period of just, documents, paperwork, and I just literally moved my entire life and it kind of was all in, and just went straight into the Israeli league and then straight into games with the national team. There might've been a little delay with the national team in terms of paperwork, but straight into the league in Israel. And that was a very interesting experience, to say the least.
Right. How did life change when you got into Israel? What was that like?
Yeah. So I think the biggest change for me was how women and just women in soccer and sports are treated. Quite a big difference from coming from the ODP, Olympic Development, and National Pool in college, NCAA, where it's like a big moneymaker, for being honest. So there's a lot of money in it and there's just like a lot of fanfare and there's a lot of support and, you have just proper supplies and the field looks great. And then to kind of make the transition to what I suspected to be a professional league in Israel was quite not, in terms of playing conditions, salary, the way players are treated. So it was a bit of a learning curve to kind of transition and just, it was back to basics. Like, I just love to play soccer, so this is okay for now. But there still was so much room for growth just for women in sports, especially in soccer. And it's still kind of going on now, as we can see kind of in the news, what's going on with the women's league there.
Did you find that there was a difference in the competition level and the way the sport was looked at in Israel than it was in the U.S.?
Yeah, for sure. There was zero respect for, when I was there, just women's soccer players. I wasn't allowed to keep any gear. After 15 years, I had to steal my national team jersey because I was never allowed to hold on to it or keep it, which says a lot, for a player who has been on the team for that long. I have one jersey and I guard it with my life because if I know if something happens to it, I probably won't get another one. It's quite different than the men who have a million trainings jerseys, cleats, and just all this stuff that they can just toss around, give to their family. The women, they really don't have that. And it seems like such a real small thing, but for a player, having your own jersey with your name on it is pretty big. And even the jersey that I had, yeah, even the jersey that I did take from the national team, it doesn't even have my name on it. I've never had a jersey with my name on it. And never had a jersey that actually fit me. They just gave out random sizes to numbers. So, some photos of me in the games, you see, I want to keep my number consistency, but my jersey looks a little bit small on me. But, so it's
looks a little ridiculous.
Yeah. So there's a lot of small things, but in general, just the way women are treated, we're expected to give 110%, but then in return, we're not really given much. And it's quite different than the U.S. where, the salary is very different. There's a lot of respect. There's quite a bit more resources. If you get injured, there's someone who's actually qualified to kind of deal with that. In Israel, it's a little bit murky with injury, salary, just contracts. There's really no consistency. So it can be kind of rough to be a woman in the Israeli league compared to the US.
Talk to me about your national team selection. What was that process like? I mean, every kid, kicks that, when we're all little, we play basketball and we play soccer and we play all these sports and we always want to 3-2-1 and we shoot the basket or we kick the game-winning goal. What was it like to be selected for Israel and to reach that pinnacle that so many kids dream about, from the time they're little?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for me because I never quite had that dream when I was a kid. I know that sounds silly, but you know, when you're a young girl and you don't have the visibility of that, you know, like that's who I want to be when I grow up. I didn't quite have that, so I didn't know that that was kind of a dream. And it wasn't until I got older that I really learned to appreciate the opportunity I had to travel the
Right.
world, to meet new players, just to enjoy life a little bit more and to open some doors that probably wouldn't have been opened otherwise. So I know it sounds maybe silly, but I didn't have that dream as a kid. And but that doesn't make me love the sport any less or appreciate the sport any
No, of course
less.
not. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, your current life in soccer, what you're doing now, and if you're not doing anything in soccer other than, pick up at the park, obviously with COVID right now, but what is it? Where has soccer led you? What is it that you love the most that it brought you to?
Yeah. So, I tried to force myself with a little bit of coaching, a little bit of personal training. But actually what was really my passion was mental health. I started out working in social work, and then I transitioned into therapy. So I do a combination of sports psychology and clinical psychology, but I really have a passion for working with teenagers. A lot of times athletes, that's what I work with now in a residential setting, who have the ability to play at a really high level, but might have some more mental health issues they need to kind of address, or just a little bit more depression, a little bit more anxiety than the normal, athlete might have to deal with. So that's become my focus now, combining the sports psychology um, and less of the training in terms of like technical work. So that's where I am
Very
now.
cool.
Yeah. Playing wise, Corona's kind of been a little of a monkey wrench, but um, I'm just working out a bit. I retired this year and I thought, maybe I'll try and stretch it out another year, but I think Corona was like the message I didn't need. I don't know what I can say. It's kind of prevented that. So I think it's
Yeah.
official retirement. So that's kind of where I'm at now. It's forced me to retire.
I hear you. So Diana, we've got a bunch of questions coming in. I want to read them off to you and kind of, let you connect with some of the people on the call. From a gentleman named Ryan, he says, oh God, my computer screen is moving. Where did it go? What was your experience with the Champions League, and how memorable was that? What did you take from that, and what do you still think about?
Yeah, I really loved the Champions League. That was one of the favorite times of the year. When I played with Maccabi Holon, I believe it was the first 3 seasons we went to the Champions League. I believe I assisted and scored every goal during those campaigns. So it was really, really great for me. Statistically, personally, it was a great, outing. And I remember I had a great opportunity of playing in Teddy Stadium in Jerusalem and scored a goal, my first Champions League, qualifier goal. So I have a really great memory of that. Not many people can say they've scored a goal in Teddy Stadium. But again, it's different than the men. Our Champions League qualifier looks quite different. It's not on TV. I'm still, I don't have video from the first couple of years. Even there was not even just video for the players or the coaches to watch. So it was kind of a really personal experience that wasn't shared with a lot of people aside from the players on the team. Not a whole lot of visibility either. So it's even hard to find statistics on a lot of those games. But
Right
still
on.
a great experience for me.
Yeah, what would you say, switching a little bit, what would you say are the best rivalries on the women's side, obviously, in Israeli club soccer? And I'm going to ask that question to Leo as well when we get to that point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Quite different than the men because the women's teams are not attached to the men. So during my first few years, it was definitely Maccabi Cologne and Asa Tel Aviv. That was like the big rivalry. The league was pretty weak at the time, so it was pretty much those 2 teams, maybe 1 or 2 other teams that might come close, but otherwise there was really nobody else in the league. So it was pretty much those games, the cup games, and then who's going to kind of make it to Champions League. So we had probably about 4 like derbies per season, I'd say. Now it's changed quite a bit. Maccabi Cologne is kind of towards the bottom of the table. You know, they've had a lot of issues with the team and ownership and just payment to players. So right now, probably Ramata Sharon and Hadera would probably be the rivalry right now. But don't quote me on that.
I've got a question for you. You know, you were in a foreign country. It was a small group of women competing against each other. Did you make any, you know, close friends, lifelong relationships and friends that that you still stay in contact with, even though you live, you know, back here in the States now?
Yeah, I definitely still talk to a lot of the girls. I think the connections are a little bit different. Obviously, the time zone is really difficult. Having a kid makes it a little difficult. So my connections, you know, in general look a little bit different now because of that, you know, with my work schedule also. But, you know, I always try and stay connected so that if there's teams that need players and I can go to like the girls in Israel, like, hey, there's a team here in the US that's looking for a midfielder, like anyone interested? Or, you know, if someone asks me for a forward, you know, the first place I'm going to go is back to the girls to see, you know, in some way, can I find someone that can fit that position? You know, so keeping at least a connection like that is important for me. You know, I want to help at least grow the player pool, grow the game in Israel, because there's really great players, but the opportunity and the help that's given in Israel is kind of, you know, it's not quite like the men, even close.
It's pretty minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say? Let's step into current times with COVID. What do you think the mental state of athletes in Israel right now with COVID? What do you think they're thinking right now, or have you been in contact with anyone?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, in Israel, it's a little less as anxiety provoking as it is in the US, because there's still a lot of uncertainty here. I think, you know, I'm seeing a lot of the players in Israel, like they're not in quarantine anymore, going out a bit more. So a little bit different. But I think there's also the disparity between who has resources to train and who doesn't. I think that's really apparent, especially, I mean, if we look at the men players and the women players, men make quite a bit more money. They probably have their own gym. They probably have some resources. They probably have help from the team. For the women, it's not a whole lot. So, you know, if you've got the backyard, great. If not, you know, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. And I think that's probably what we're going to see in the league. Is it's going to be really apparent who financially can make up for it, or who had the resources, or, you know, who wasn't home watching a kid. You know, there's a lot of just factors in what's going on with the female players. Not to say that the men players aren't experiencing anything, but
yeah. Interesting question here from Helena Lewis. What was the college recruitment process for her? She's a junior, and what advice can you give to Helena in order to potentially get to the level that you've reached?
Yeah, I think the visibility part, making sure that you have proper video of yourself, you know, trying to find things that maybe have you stand out from other players. And that could be in terms of like mental game, you know, the way that you speak, the way you interact with other players, coaches, you know, make sure you get references from other, you know, either coaches or players, just something to add into that. There's a lot of ID camps that are really great to kind of get yourself out there. And always think about a player that really motivates you, or someone that you're like, that's the player I want to be, and see how you can kind of strive to be that player a little bit, and being really mindful of what changes you might need to make to get there, and part of that process.
Very cool. Last question. How's your Hebrew?
Well, I've been in LA for...
Well, it's got to be good. You're married to an Israeli man, which I know.
Yeah, so we have a funny relationship where he speaks to me in Hebrew and I get to answer in English because it's just easier. And, so now my daughter kind of picks up on that. She answers to me in English and speaks to him in Hebrew. So yeah, it's hard here because all day I work and I speak in English to my clients. So I'm not really speaking Hebrew all day anymore. So it is getting rusty for sure.
All right. Did you find that being in Israel and not speaking the language was a barrier for you with the national team and with your teams?
No, I mean, a lot of people in Israel speak English, so that wasn't so much a barrier. I personally pick up language pretty quick as long as I'm using it. So it wasn't too much of a struggle, I think, in terms of, if I think about careers and jobs in Israel as a mental health professional, it's definitely a struggle because you need to have really emotional and in-depth conversations, which can be difficult for someone whose second language, is Hebrew. So that was probably the only issue that I really came across in terms of communicating with people.
All right, very cool. Does anybody have any other questions for Diana before we switch over? Okay, I don't see anybody typing. I don't see anything. Well, Diana, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, first of all, having you tonight. Also, it's been a pleasure, taking the field with you. I hope that we can, once Balboa Park opens up again, we'll get back out there real soon, okay?
Sounds good.
So, again, Diana is a mental health, she works in mental health, and on that, I'd like to introduce Leo, definitely a potential client for her in the future. Those of you who have met Leo, I see Joel laughing because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Leo is a good friend at this point. We played on a team together. Leo and I went to the Pan Am Games down in Chile. I'm proud to say that I recruited Leo right out of his professional career in Israel back onto the Maccabi field in 2015. And he's a stud. The guy knows what he's doing. All right, so I will introduce him now, and then we can move on. If you have questions for Leo, please drop them into the group chat so that way I can get it out there. Leo played 14 professional years. Started in the MLS, went through the USL, and finished in Israel. 2005 was the perfect stage for Leo. He was invited by Maccabi Netanya after playing and winning a silver medal with them at the Maccabi Games to make a move to play in Israel. His Israeli career lasted for 10 years, including a championship in 08-09 with Maccabi Haifa, qualifying to the Europa League with Bnei Sanin in 2007, and then Maccabi Netanya in 2012. Since retiring, Leo has returned to the Maccabi competition, representing with pride Team USA over 35 in Chile in 15 and Israel in 2017. He's also represented some high-level soccer players, with two of them making a move to play in Israel. I'm sure we're going to get into that in a minute. Leo lives up in Northern California in Silicon Valley with his Israeli wife, his dog, two Sabras, and one American daughter. He is currently a varsity head coach at Menlo Atherton High School, winning 2 league titles in the last 5 years. And his main job is taking them to another green field, which everybody knows out here in California is very popular. Anyway, without further ado, I will introduce Leo Krupnik. You've got the intro. Leo, tell us a little bit about how you got into soccer. I know that Leo was born in the Ukraine, right? Leo, is it Ukraine or former Soviet Union?
Yeah, hello everybody. I was born in the former Soviet Union, a little town called Khmelnytsky. Bogdan Khmelnytsky was one great Jew killer, so of course the Ukrainians named the city after him. So I was born there, and I grew up there until I was 12, and then we made a move to US from Ukraine. I did start out my athletic career as a gymnast, and when I was about 10, 11, I got into club soccer in my city, and then 2 years later we immigrated to US.
And what year was that? What year did you come over this way?
1991. That's when I discovered America.
Making us all feel really old.
That's you, Doug.
Just me? Okay, just me. Tell us a little bit about, Maccabi USA and your connection to that. I know that I kind of share a little bit, but we all want to hear it from your words, from your mouth.
Say it again, sorry.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your connection to Maccabi USA. I know that I spoke about it a minute ago, but we all want to hear it from you.
Yeah, so when I was 13 years old, I joined Maccabi games in Baltimore. That was my first Maccabi experience in 1992. And, being an immigrant from the Soviet Union, not be able to speak English, kind of being lost, desperate to play sports, this opportunity showed up. And and I'm so glad I joined that team. I was the youngest player on the team. We went to Baltimore. I I left my family. I had barely any English that I spoke, and that kind of like really put me an ease into American culture. My host family took me to Baltimore Park to watch the boring baseball game. I'm glad we left after eighth inning. It was Cal Ripken, I think. He was a big hero there. And So that was my first taste of Maccabi. I did a couple more Pan Am games. And then my big Maccabi, again, Maccabi came to my rescue as 2005. I was considering of retiring from soccer. And I got a call from Lev Kirshner from San Diego State, and asked me if I want to play Maccabiah. So I called the team. I called my coach at Wilmington, who's been trying to get me back, and I said the only way I'll come back if you let me go play in Maccabi games in the summertime. And he said, yeah, no problem. So I went, I joined the team in 2015, which was an unbelievable team, really like loaded with talent. And We had a great run. Unfortunately, we just ran out of steam, and having Benny not be able to participate in the finals was a big, it hurt us a bit. But it really gave me a push into my next chapter of my life, which is move to Israel by having me being seen by a coach's brother, actually. Head coach of Maccabi Netanya at the time was Reuven Attar, and his brother saw me play, I believe, against Canada, and I actually scored a goal. For those who know me, I'm a big time scoring machine. So I actually scored. I actually scored against Canada, and then after that game, I had a couple of people talk to me about making a move to Israel, and at first I took it as a joke, and then once my season was over, I made the move to Israel.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit more about your college career at Cal, and how that impacted your future playing.
Right. So like basically all my life I started low and I finished high. So in high school, nobody really knew about me, and then I started playing with a local team called San Francisco Seals, and that produced many of MLS greats like CJ Brown. Those guys actually really liked me, and then they helped me to get to get recruited to Cal. So once I came to Cal, the coach had no plans for me. In my freshman year, I started out barely making a traveling squad, and then my sophomore year and beginning of the year, I also didn't make a traveling squad. And then once they came back, I pretty much became a starter, and then my senior year I was already a captain. Well, my second half of my junior year I was a team captain, and then my senior year we actually made it to the tournaments, which was a big plus. And then so and then
Very cool.
To point it out, like my college career, it was a big change. My junior year, the coach finally got fired, the one that our team did not like, and Kevin Grimes joined, who's the winningest coach at Cal right now, and he really gave me a big push into my professional career.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit about the transition after you went to the Maccabiah in 2005, won a silver medal with that team. You can drop some names of some players that you were on with that, and tell us this. I already know the story, obviously, because you and I know you well, but tell us about the story about how you got signed. I think that's a really great story, and how your sister was involved and everything.
Yeah. So again, we had myself, Mike Erush, who played at LMU, and he was I think with LA Chivas USA at that time. We had Jared Goldberg, little guy in the middle, who's pretty good. Joe Katz, who was on the way to UW. He was a good player. and then we had Johnny Bornstein and Benny, who were UCLA players at the time, with Benny just coming back from the youth championship, I think the World Cup, where we played against Messi. So big talents, you know, like right away you could see it was a good group of guys. Um, and we had a great great run. And then again after that Canada game, um, I think they actually came to see Mike Erush play, and then they you know they spoke to me after the game, and I told them, like, listen, I got to go back to US, finish the season with Hammerheads. I'm on the contract, and then after the season, there'll be, you know, we can speak. And it was, I forgot the name of the agent. He's the one who spoke to me. And then after I got to US, I completely lost touch with him. And my cousin, who was big football fan, she said, hey, you know what, I'm going to pursue this. So she actually called Rubenata, the coach, and she's introduced herself and said, hey, I'm Leo's cousin. How do we get him to Israel? And I spoke to him with his broken English, and I didn't speak Hebrew at the time. And they flew me to Netanya. I stayed in a hotel. I actually thought it was one of my worst tryouts. We lost in the game where I played a 3-0. And after the game, they called me and said, we want to sign you. So it was great. It was a great beginning, and you know, my life completely changed. My football career, like all the hard work, you know, it paid off, and it was like a fresh beginning for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was life like, you know, over there? You went to Israel and you were, what, 22 years old, something like that?
No.
What was it like?
So my first time I went to Israel, I was 24, and I tried out, and both Apol Beersheva and Bnei Yehuda told me no. And then, and when I returned, I was 26. I just turned 26. And it was, you know, that was my second time in Israel, but you know, obviously first time living in Israel. And I felt like I was a superstar, you know, like all of a sudden, like, you know, I'm on TV, people know me, you know, like making good money, I'm living on the beach, you know, playing, you know, football, the game that I love, like in front of fans. I mean, it was, you know, it's all you can dream of.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you've had a lot of, you've played for a number of teams. I know that you have the flyers up on there, and it's showing a little bit of some of the teams that you played for. Obviously, you played in the U.S., you played in Israel. What would you say your highlight of your time in Israel was? What was, you know, what was your best accomplishment? What would you say is the one memory that you're going to cherish forever? Other than playing with me in 2015, obviously, me and Rob.
Well, obviously, like, you know, the highlight is winning the championship, right? It's although like I didn't really enjoy it because we won the championship. We had another game against Beitar. It was the last game, and then right after the game, I flew back to US. So we didn't, you know, at that night, you know, the team and the fans went to celebrate, and I kind of missed that. I should have stayed an extra day. So I missed that out, and it went too quick, you know. And then after the vacation, there was talks about me going to New York Red Bulls, and so. But I mean, it's a highlight of my career, no matter how you look at it. You know, I've had great things. You know, like I've gotten to the finals of the Israel Cup. Gvia Toto Cups, you know, like we had a great run in Bnei Sakhnin, which is a tiny Arab team in Israel. We finished 4th, which is unbelievable. We qualified for a Europa League. At that time, it was a UEFA Cup Winner Cup. No, it was like a Toto Cup or something. And with that team, we made it to the final of the Toto Cup as well. And then with Maccabi Netanya, we set a record of unbeaten streak of 18 games, and also making the Europa League, and finally playing in the Europa League, which was fun. So there's a lot of highlights, but you know, winning the championship is what I played for, and that was the highlight.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about, you've played for both teams in the U.S. and in Israel. Tell us a little bit about the difference in competing. I asked this question to Diana, but I want to hear your opinion as well. Tell us about the difference of competing on these Israeli teams than it was, competing with the New York Red Bulls and the teams here in the U.S.
So in the U.S., it's more a culture of fun. It's a fun game, right? Everybody's coming out, enjoying. The fans, you barely hear them. I played in the Giant Stadium, Meadowlands, and it was like 20,000 people, and you can hear a pin drop. And then I played in Sakhnin. It was like 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 people, and you can't hear a word of somebody else is telling you. It's so loud. There's a lot of passion in New York. I remember it was one of my, I think, like a mistake. I shouldn't have gone there, but I came. The team lost 15 games in a row, and everyone was all right with it. Like going out to drinking and partying, and it's kind of like a relaxed atmosphere. And Israel is intense, and like that's the beauty of having relegation and promotion, is that every single game counts. Everything is under pressure, and that's what I strive for. I love that pressure. I loved having every game count, and that's what drove me.
That's awesome. I've got a really great question from Kai. Kai is asking you, Leo, did you ever have to serve in the Israeli army during your time in Israel, and if not, why not?
They thought it was too dangerous. They couldn't. They couldn't. They wanted to send me to a couple of places, but I'm dangerous. No. I went. I was too old. They didn't want to take me. I was 26 years old. I think you were. I think the cutoff like at 22. So I just gotta. I had to go to the army to tell them, for them to tell me that, like, hey, you're excused. Don't ever come here again. Yeah.
Okay.
But I would have made a great soldier.
I'm not even gonna justify that with a response. I know you too well. I've got a great question from Colin. Colin plays soccer for Solar in the MLS Academy League in the under 17 division, and he wants to know, how would he go about playing pro in Israel one day, and how and who do I get in touch with? So maybe, Leo, you can touch on the two players that you brought to Israel from the U.S., the collegiate ranks, because I think that's brilliant what you did there.
Right. Obviously with me retiring, I was trying to figure out what's next in my life, and it kind of like a friend of mine called me and said, hey, this team is looking for a striker. Do you know anybody with the Jewish roots? And I said, yeah, I do. And I knew of Aaron Schoenfeld, and I thought that he was a little bit of a different player and he'd do well in Israel. And so I called him up and I asked him if he's interested, and he said yes. And I brought him to Netanya, and we got him a citizenship very fast because of the help of municipality of Netanya. As long as you're Jewish, you can get a citizenship in Israel, and you're an attraction to Israeli teams. So they're constantly looking. All the Israeli teams are constantly looking for players abroad. I was kind of the pioneer of it, and then especially when I brought Schoenfeld and he did well his first year in Israel. Then after that, more and more interest rose from that, and then I was able to bring. I'm blanking the name. Gorski. It was Jason Gorski. I brought him to Bnei Sakhnin, and he played there for half a year. And then I was also I had a contract to represent Steve Birnbaum, Zach McMath, and Zach Pfeffer to Israel. But Steve Birnbaum was a very attractive offer by Maccabi Tel Aviv. McMath had a big offer from Apol Tel Aviv, but at the end it didn't work out. So I kind of stepped away from that gig, and yeah. But there's opportunities. Cool. There's definitely opportunities for Jewish American players, because it's a different type of player that Israeli players like.
Yeah, we're gonna stay on that topic because there's a few questions in that. How does youth development compare between the two countries? If you can elaborate on that. Are there youth development camps in Israel, and are there professionals involved in those camps, or is it really just more of a grassroots scenario?
Right. It's I think U.S. hasn't figured it out, right? So I think there's still a pay-to-play system in U.S., and it's unfortunate that that the kids are being looked at for their money instead of their talent, and raising the kids and developing them into professionals and making money on them that way. But U.S. does have the college system, and the kids do not really belong to the club, so clubs have their hands tied about developing the players and then losing them to teams in Mexico or Israel or Europe, whatever, because they can't make any money off them. The kids, until they're 18 years old, can leave and have no obligation to pay the club. And in Israel, there's a lot of player development because it's a business. They want to invest money, they want to develop kids, and sell them off to clubs, or have them to represent their own club because there's a professional system that's working.
Very cool. Here's a question from my buddy Joel, who I know is a major Maccabi Tel Aviv fan. What is the major impediment to Israeli soccer to progress? Obviously, they're very technical, but they always fail in the big games and never make it to the European Championship or World Cup. Where do you think the disconnect is, Leo? What's going on that's not working?
Israel is a tiny country, and there's got to be more resources put into it. And, not a lot of countries. Israel is a special place, they're surrounded by enemies. There's a lot of money that's going out for defense. It's tough to invest that much money into sport, although they've done quite well for the size, and they just need to be patient. A lot of times there's too big of a turnover of coaches. The Israelis, it's a Middle East, and everything is hot and on emotion. So you can be on top of the world in 1 minute, and the next game that you lose, you're about to get fired. So there's got to be more patience. There's got to be more development in the youth. The coaches are barely getting paid. Like when I was leaving Israel, I was offered by Maccabi Tel Aviv to coach their under-16 team, and the pay was a joke. I wouldn't have been able to survive. It's got to be an investment in good coaches and youth development, just like in US, but in a different level in Israel. And we also got to remember that we compete against Italy and France and Spain, and it's tough to get out, right? US is playing against Granada or some island where their main competitions are Guatemala, Honduras. Israel would be in the World Cup every single time if they had competition like that.
Gotcha. There was one here now. The page is moving. Where did it go? I had a really good question for you. Oh, here it is. If you were still playing pro right now during this COVID era, what do you think about playing without fans, in the stadiums at this point? What's your take on this? You played professional soccer. We want to know.
Yeah, it's terrible. Empty. Fans do drive. They bring out the best out of players. It's unfortunate, but at this point, beggars can't be choosers. You got to play. Like if you got an opportunity to play, I'd play without fans. It is what it is. I think there's got to be a maybe half-empty stadium or something, but having a little bit of fans, and hopefully this whole thing will go away sooner than later.
Well, Leo, I'll always be your fan, buddy.
Can't say likewise.
From Jordan asked a question. He'd like to know and get your thoughts on Beitar FC in Israel. Yeah, not exactly sure what the question is, but yeah, I'm just reading it to you.
Yeah, it was always a great competition for me. It's it's the only club where Antigua is played, which is because it's capital, and that always gave me goosebumps to play at Teddy. You know, I played on the Bnei Sakhnin, which is an Arab team. That was a huge rivalry. There was always a fun times to play against Beitar. I played it with Maccabi Haifa when we won the championship. Beitar Jerusalem won it a year before. So that was a great competition then. 1 second, I gotta plug in my phone before I lose you guys. So it was, you know, if you look at Beitar, if the question is like what I think about the fans and how radical the team is, then, you know, every country has a special team, and that's Israel's, you know. But if you ask me a more particular question, maybe I can answer it better.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. So Kai asked another great question. What do you think is the best way to get noticed by an Israeli professional team?
To know somebody like myself that can recommend you, or to be seen, right? Because when I went to Israel 2 years before, you know, it's not that all of a sudden I became a great player in like 2 years. It was just because the coaches didn't see me play in the game, and I come all of a sudden like a no-name guy comes in and asking for a trial. You know, it's easy for them to kind of like look over me, you know, and I did great in those tryouts. I scored, I played well, you know. I don't think there was a reason why they shouldn't have kept me, but I didn't make it. And here in Maccabiah, they see me play in the game, and they liked me. And now they paid for my way to go to Netanya. So when a club is investing in you, bringing you over, it's already showing a sign that they are interested in you, and it's a lot easier to make. Or again, if it comes from somebody like myself, or somebody who's played in Israel and have a personal friend, like some of my friends are now coaching, and say like, hey, this guy is good, give him a shot. Just like awesome. Business, right? Just like anything, you know, like you can get a job, you know. Right? It's who you know, and like, you know, it's easier to get a job if somebody brings you and introduces you as one of your guys.
Very cool. Someone is asking if you're planning to play in the next Mappa Beta in 22.
I don't know what I'm doing this summer.
Not me.
I was planning to be vacationing in Croatia this summer, but you can never plan.
That's not happening. Okay, Jordan asked, do you think that Israel will ever win a World Cup?
No chance. Well, I mean,
I'm hoping it was a rhetorical question, Jordan.
Right. It's like, you know, it's like Iceland, you know, like would they win the World Cup? Yeah, they can have a good run, but, you know, you still have their years and years and years of work that, you know, it's really difficult to win a World Cup. I mean, you're competing against great soccer nations.
Yeah. No, I know. Here's a great question.
Noah asked, but we are chosen people, so you never know.
You never know. Do you think the publicity around Sakhnin's miracle run in 2004 had a positive impact on Arab-Israeli relations among soccer fans in the years to follow? And he cited a really great documentary about it, which I think everyone can see. I'm not sure.
I think my year in Sakhnin was more special because throughout the year we beat Beitar, we competed, we finished fourth. We should have finished third, but we finished fourth, and we had a great run. I mean, Sakhnin in the miracle year, they won the Israeli Cup, and it was a great team effort. I don't know. I mean, I think there's good relationship between Arab and Jewish fans or whatever. It's just a bad blood between Beitar and Sakhnin, but I've never felt like there's any like racism or racial slurs during games. You know, I mean, like I zoom out so I can't hear, but like Sakhnin fans took me in, you know, perfectly fine, and in away games, like I've never really felt any bad blood between like Arabs and Jews. I mean, I think it's more of a media is kind of like a sweet spot. Like if something is going wrong, hey, Jews against Arabs, let's focus on that.
Brilliant. I love it. Okay. Any other questions, anybody? I guess not. I got one question here. I think it's a joke. I'm not really sure. Did your professional singing career get derailed by soccer?
Did my professional singing career?
Yeah. And that was from a gentleman named Josh Freeman. I don't know if you know him.
He's not a very funny guy, but and it's not a very. But my singing career is still.
No, I'm on a Maccabi show. Why? What's up? Not soccer in Israel.
Dan, you're not muted.
Hey, Doug.
No, it's muted. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, my singing career is still up ahead, so I'm taking classes right now, and it's coming along.
All right,
So
brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. Actually, another question just popped up. One more question just popped up. Yep. What about Aaron Schoenfeld going back to the MLS, and do you think the Israeli League will export more players back to the U.S. in the future?
There's few when Omri Damari got signed by Red Bulls, San Jose Earthquake called me and asked me right away, hey, what do you think of this guy? Is he going to do well? And I said, no, like he doesn't fit MLS. And of course he struggled, and so it's not for everybody. But Gadi Kinda, a player like Gadi Kinda, like there's a couple of other guys in Israel that are, like Ran Zahavi, for example. I think they do brilliant in the U.S. Because it's like just because Aaron Schoenfeld, he had like a big body, and if he really put in the work and he would have been dedicated to football, he would have done a lot better in Israel. But there were some things that I don't want to really talk about why his career went downwards. I can't see him doing well in the MLS either. It's just like I think it's a character, a person's character. Like he was always fine of being the guy on the bench and coming on and playing 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. And, that's what he's doing in Minnesota right now, it seems like as well. I could never do it. If a team wasn't playing me, I was always looking to make less money, but I wanted to play. Like my love was play. Like there's not enough money that anybody could pay me and have me sitting on the bench. Like all my teams I played for, I always played.
Well, thank you very much, Leo. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Doug. This was an incredible opportunity to hear from you both. I just want to say that tomorrow we are rounding out the rest of our week from Maccabi at Home with our next President's Forum with 3 Maccabi USA alumni who work in collegiate athletics, discussing their work and how they've been impacted by coronavirus, COVID-19, and what they think the future will hold. So please join us tomorrow. Thanks again for joining us tonight, and thank you again to Doug, to Diana, and to Leo.
Yes, thank you, Leo. Thank you, Diana.